Next on Currents News, the bishops of New Jersey and Pennsylvania back from their Ad Limina visit with the Pope. One of their requests, release the findings of Theodore McCarrick's sexual abuse investigation. President Trump is at the NATO summit, this as the impeachment inquiry moves into the next phase. Marking World AIDS Day with a prayer vigil at St. Augustine in Park Slope. Plus, the Pope telling the world just how important nativity scenes are to the true meaning of Christmas. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm CJ Papa. The bishops of New Jersey and Pennsylvania are at home tonight after their Ad Limina visit to the Vatican. One topic they discussed when meeting with Pope Francis was the church's investigation of ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. Currents News, Tim Harfman has that story.
A contingent of U.S. bishops spent their Thanksgiving Day with Pope Francis. A group photograph showed the bishops from New Jersey and Pennsylvania with the Holy Father. The meeting was the highlight of their Ad Limina visit to the Vatican, when they shared detailed reports on the life of the church in their diocese. The term Ad Limina means the bishops are making a pilgrimage as the successors of the apostles.
When you take a look at the story of the Acts of the Apostles, it wasn't always easy. But there was always a direction of where the Holy Spirit was guiding them, and I think that we're at a similar moment in the history of the church as well, too.
The bishops' meeting with the Holy Father lasted more than 2 hours. A major topic discussed, the clerical sexual abuse crisis. The American bishops asked for the release of the report on the Vatican's investigation into ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. He had served in New Jersey and in Washington as Archbishop and was laicized last year for alleged abuse in the 1980s. Cardinal Joseph TOBIN of NEWARK says the McCarrick case was one of several incidents that hurt the church's reputation, including the Pennsylvania grand jury report on clerical abuse and the allegation by the former Vatican ambassador to the U.S. that McCarrick's wrongdoing wasn't being investigated.
Those three things just unleashed a reaction that at times was very angry, at times was very desperate, and at times was just almost hopeless.
The bishops believe publishing the Vatican's investigation on McCarrick could restore trust.
That's all we've been accused of, if you read the Pennsylvania grand jury report. Cover up, cover up, cover up. And this would be one way in which we can express transparency, too. That, okay, we went up the chain to see where the mistakes were made.
Cardinal TOBIN says the Pope told him the report will be released, but didn't give a time frame.
My hope is that it's going to be true and it's going to be complete.
Tim Harfman, Currents News.
A new lawsuit is filed against the Archdiocese of Newark. The alleged victim claims he was sexually abused by Theodore McCarrick in the 1990s. Now, the suit comes a day after a New Jersey law went into effect that extends the statute of limitations for people to make claims against both public and religious institutions. Also tonight, President Trump is in London for the NATO summit. He left Washington this morning as the battle over impeachment moves into a new stage. A report on the investigation is coming out soon, as are more hearings in the House. Emily Schmidt reports the latest.
President Trump left the White House Monday for a NATO trip, packing little patience for the House impeachment process happening without him.
This is one of the most important journeys that we make as president. And for them to be doing this and saying this and putting an impeachment on the table, which is a hoax to start off with.
Criticism continued in tweets, showing Air Force One leaving for NATO's anniversary while calling Democrats not nice for scheduling impeachment work now. Democrats disagree.
This White House has blocked us every step of the way and then wants to cry that the process is unfair. So we have more than enough evidence to move forward with impeachment.
The week is packed with potential impeachment steps. Monday, House Intelligence Committee members review findings about whether President Trump sought a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Tuesday, the intelligence panel votes whether to send the report to the House Judiciary Committee. Wednesday, that committee has scheduled a hearing about constitutional grounds for impeachment. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, also in Europe for the United Nations Climate Change Summit, said she would not talk about impeachment there.
When we travel abroad, we don't talk about the president in a negative way, and we save that for home.
Plenty of politics clearly waiting in Washington for the president's return. In Washington, Emily Schmidt, Currents News.
And London is on high alert tonight because the president and other world leaders are in town for the NATO summit and because of Friday's terror attack. Now, the cops are worried about copycats after a convicted terrorist went on a stabbing rampage. 2 Cambridge University graduates were killed. The suspect, Usman Khan, was shot dead by police on London Bridge. He'd been out of jail for a year after serving part of a sentence for his involvement in a 2010 terror plot. Tonight, Iraq is on edge and the Pope is worried about deadly violence gripping that country. Protests across the nation have left more than 400 people dead in the last 2 months. The unrest is being sparked by anger over corruption in Baghdad and Iran's influence on local politics. At the Vatican, Francis expressed his concerns about the crisis.
Seguo con preoccupazione la situazione in Iraq. Prego per I defunti e per I feriti. Sono vicino ai loro familiari e all'intero popolo iracheno.
The Holy Father said he was calling upon God for peace and harmony in Iraq. Iraq's prime minister is quitting his job. He made the decision to step down after security forces opened fire on unarmed protesters, killing dozens 4 days ago. An emergency session, the parliament accepted the resignation yesterday. Still, Ara Damon reports among protesters in Baghdad that they want more change.
It's quite chaotic here, but this is Shema, and we were just talking to her. She was saying she just wants the United Nations to come in and get involved and look at what is going on here, to come in and actually support the population. And they also want to end Iran's influence. If you come this way, you can see, if you come this way, you can see what has become this de facto front line. And what they're trying to do here is keep pushing forward to take control of these vital bridges that cross the Tigris River. And in doing that, they're hoping to keep up even more pressure on the Iraqi government, because they say unless they keep going like this, unless they keep trying to push forward and make sure that their demands are heard, they say nothing is going to change. Shema showing us what is being shot at them. He's saying this is the blood. Shusar. مين هالدم مين دم مين هلا he says this is blood from someone who he says was just shot, who was just injured, and he carried him, and this is the blood. You can see really just how intense it is here right now. And again, as we were saying, these are demonstrators who are determined to hold this ground, to hold all ground that they have, and to keep pushing forward, because as I was saying, they want to make sure that this time their demands are heard. And what they will also tell you is that just demonstrating has not been enough in the past. They say that they have to keep the pressure up, otherwise they say the government will just keep on making its empty promises. Arwa Damon, Baghdad.
Stay with us. Bishop Frank Caggiano will be here. He's the new chairman of Catholic Relief Services. The organization is dedicated to working around the world to help people overcome emergencies. He'll talk about Iraq and more. That's still ahead in the newscast. This next story is one that you only find on Currents News. Linking their voices to others around the globe, a Brooklyn parish held a moving ceremony to mark World AIDS Day. They remembered those who have died while providing hope to the living. Currents News' Emily Drewby reports from Park Slope.
Memorialized for all to hear and to see the names of those who lost their lives to HIV/AIDS.
It's a way of just reminding ourselves of the terrible tragedies that we went through when we didn't know what the disease was. And people were dying, our friends were dying, our colleagues were dying.
Friends, family, and fellow parishioners honored on World AIDS Day at St. Augustine Church in Park Slope.
This neighborhood lost a lot of people during the AIDS epidemic, and we still continue to lose lots of people.
A candlelight memorial remembering the 35 million people who have lost their lives to the disease, including many from Brooklyn. Bob BIEGEN says they do it because it's what Jesus would want.
As Christians, we have a tremendous responsibility to be our brother's keeper, and that's what we're commanded to do, and that's what we must do.
The parish is no stranger when it comes to ministering to those with HIV/AIDS, even providing hope or healing ourselves and people everywhere, a dinner that brings together those affected by the disease once a month. And as Father Thomas Brosnan explains, hope is exactly what it promotes.
The chance for those who are suffering from the epidemic to come together and share with one another their concerns and their fellowship and friendship with each other.
They've held the dinner every month since 1993.
Stanley Santoro.
From the vigil to the ribbons to the dinners, St. Augustine is doing everything possible to help fight for those dealing with HIV/AIDS. In Park Slope, Emily Druby, Currents News.
New York City getting slammed with a winter weather mess that's predicted to become an all-snowstorm later tonight. A mix of rain and snow started falling in town this afternoon, leading to a really sloppy rush hour. According to the National Weather Service, the precipitation will turn to all snow. About 4 inches are expected. Now, in parts of Westchester, New Jersey, and Connecticut, they could have up to 10 inches of snow. There's a lot more news headed your way. Pope Francis urging Christians around the world to continue the tradition of nativity scenes in public places. And serving the poorest of the poor around the world, we speak to Bishop Frank Caggiano, who has just been tapped to lead Catholic Relief Services. And history being made, the first violinist ever to perform inside the Sistine Chapel. Do you have a story idea or you want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Christmas quickly approaching, and Catholic Relief Services wants to make sure the season is a little brighter for the poorest among us around the world. Heading up that challenge is Bishop Frank J. Caggiano, the Diocese of Bridgeport. Now, last week, he was named chairman of the organization's board of directors. He joins me now from his Connecticut headquarters. And first of all, Bishop, thanks for joining us and congratulations.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And I'm hoping that you're going to keep me in your prayers because I'm going to need them.
Well, we certainly will, Bishop. But what's it like jumping into this job now with just a few weeks away from Christmas?
Well, I must confess, when Archbishop Gomez called and asked whether I would take over as chair, I was quite surprised. But I had been elected to the board, and it has been growing in my heart to try to be of help, particularly in this ministry in the church. So I was excited. I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot to learn, and 3 years is enough time to, please God, learn it well.
And, you know, your term runs until November of 2022. Mm-hmm. What are some of the long-term challenges facing CRS?
From my perspective, as I said, there's much for me to learn. From my perspective, one of the things CRS needs to continue to do is tell the good news of its work. Because there are many people, for example, in my diocese here in Bridgeport, who are very generous, who have very little knowledge of all the relief services that the church is providing, all of the help it's providing. So I would think communication and education is one. Certainly the need around the world continues to grow, so there will always be those challenges as well.
Bishop, you mentioned around the world. What are the greatest needs right now, and what is CRS doing in Iraq?
Well, in Iraq, it is there providing food and medicine. It's also on the ground providing support services. It's one of the largest presences in Iraq. And again, it's credit to the church that in places of war and combat, we're there providing the gospel and providing the care that God's people and God's children need. It's also in Syria, it's in Palestine, it is throughout Asia and Africa. It's present in over 75 countries, which is astonishing when you consider that level of charitable giving and humanitarian aid.
Bishop, there are many charities that help the poor. But what is it about Catholic Relief Services that sets it apart from others?
Well, it's the gospel in action, isn't it? It's for those of us of the faith to be able to make that faith present and active in the lives of people who are the poorest of the poor, who are marginalized, who are basically threatened. And we do it in our own country. And of course, we do it around the world because that's what the Lord asked of us in Matthew 25. So in my mind, this is an essential piece of who we are. And I'm delighted to be part of it.
And how can viewers get involved to give to CRS?
Well, if you visit the website of CRS, there is a portal for donation. And at Christmas time, it's the ideal place to be able to do that. And then in the months ahead, there'll be other venues. As I learn myself, the different ways to be able to allow people to give, I will be happy to let you have that information.
Thanks again, Bishop, the new director of the Board of Catholic Relief Services and the Bishop of Bridgeport.
Thank you and have a blessed Advent.
As Bishop Caggiano pointed out, you can help Catholic Relief Services in their mission. Just go to crs.org and click on the Donate Now button. There is more to Christmas than just picking out that perfect present for family and friends. It's a time of prayer and reflection as well. Pope Francis making that point with the importance of the nativity scene. Pope Francis visited the Franciscan shrine at Graccio on Sunday afternoon. It is a place where, in the 13th century, St. Francis started the tradition of the nativity scene. Upon arriving to the town, the Pope warmly greeted a group of sick and disabled people who waited for him with their families. At the sanctuary, the Pope was welcomed by the Bishop of Rieti and the Franciscan groundskeeper of the shrine. A crowd holding colorful balloons cheered as the Pope walked by. A group of children sang this song about St. Francis. Once inside the sanctuary, the Pope stopped for a moment of silent prayer. Then he signed an apostolic letter on the significance of the nativity scene. Afterward, he stopped to talk to the religious men and women gathered in the grotto. They shared a moment of laughter after the Pope surprised them with an unexpected question. Then they all took a group photo. Pope Francis exited the grotto and greeted the people waiting for him outside. He was surprised to see them wearing traditional costumes for the living nativity scene. Pope Francis then offered a reflection on the gospel reading of the Nativity of Jesus. Now, the Pope reminded those present of the importance of simplicity, wisdom, silence, and prayer. He also spoke of the need to recognize in the Nativity the sign of God's immense love for humanity.
In questo segno semplice e mirabile del presepe, che la pietà popolare ha accolto e trasmesso di generazione in generazione, viene manifestato il grande mistero della nostra fede. Dio ci ama a tal punto da condividere la nostra umanità e la nostra vita. Non ci lascia mai soli.
The Pope blessed those gathered, asking God to grant them peace. As he left to head back to Rome, this choir was in charge of saying goodbye. That's nice. Now, Francis says that the nativity scene reminds us that Jesus was born in poverty and led a simple life. The U.S. Supreme Court took on a Second Amendment case today for the first time in nearly a decade. Now, the justices seem split along ideological lines. They were considering a New York law about transporting guns that has already been repealed. Now, the liberals argued that made the case before them moot. Two conservatives on the bench focus on other questions about gun control laws that could lead to a wider ruling. A new poll is out showing strong opposition to the death penalty among most Americans. Pope Francis has changed the Catholic catechism to reflect church teaching that the ultimate punishment is never acceptable. A new Gallup poll finds that 60% of adults prefer that convicted murderers receive life in prison. Only 36% said capital punishment would be better. Still to come on Currents News. A musical ministry, a celebrated violinist, makes history performing at the Sistine Chapel. And decking the halls, an inside look at this year's Christmas decorations inside the White House. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the ARCHDIOCESE family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments, such as baptism, first communion, confirmation, and marriage. For more information and to submit your pictures, go to the tablet.org/ARCHDIOCESE family. We'll be right back. An accomplished musician who has played for presidents and prime ministers has now made history, becoming the first ever violinist to perform at the Sistine Chapel. As Melissa Butts reports, she's calling it her musical ministry.
A small-town farm girl from Manitoba, Canada, and her 300-year-old violin hold an amazing title in the Vatican. Musician Rosemary Simons was the first violinist ever to play in the Sistine Chapel. As part of the biggest honor of her life, the Vatican gifted her a scroll with the title.
We were in the Sistine Chapel, and literally they didn't know if it would be allowed until the last minute. And but I got to play Amazing Grace, and it was like one of the highlights of my career. It was unbelievable. And a few years earlier, I was actually the first violinist to ever play at the St. Peter's Basilica as well.
She played Amazing Grace, coinciding with her love for gospel music and church hymns, which make up a majority of her music.
It's actually turned into a musical ministry, a kind of modern musical ministry for me. I've always loved hymns, and I wrote a song on my last album called Bring Back the Hymns. And so it's just been something on my heart because I feel like a lot of churches are leaving the hymns, and there's so much history and so much beauty in them. And so I thought I would do my part to bring back the hymns. And so I started a Sunday hymn serenade. And so people know they can come to my YouTube every Sunday and have a new hymn.
She's performed at Carnegie Hall in New York for 2 U.S. presidents and 2 Canadian prime ministers, and has won Best Country Gospel Album of the Year. Yet she still has one more goal: to play for the Pope.
He was supposed to be at the event at the Sistine, but last minute couldn't come. I wish, that's a dream. That's a new dream, but hopefully one day it will happen, yeah.
For now, she's happy making history with her gospel music and touching lives with each stroke of her violin.
That music is beautiful, and that's a report from Melissa Butts. Finally tonight, the White House is getting ready for Christmas. First Lady Melania Trump tweeting out a video today showing off the decorations inside the executive mansion. It's a simple white color scheme. The theme is the spirit of America. Here's a sample of the video. And the First Lady says she's excited for everyone to experience the beauty of the Christmas season. That is Currents News. I'm CJ Papa. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again soon.